I realized that at the end of the day, it wasn't that she was overfat. It was that she was undermuscled. And we spend decades and have spent decades trying to treat obesity when really what we need to be looking at is skeletal muscle.
Super interesting. We know that the brain is among the most metabolically active organs in the body, and muscle too, one of the most metabolically active organs in the body. You'll probably tell me that one is more active than the other. Which one is it?
Muscle is actually, quite frankly, not very metabolically active at rest.
Interesting.
For every pound of skeletal muscle, it might at rest burn 10 calories. Primarily burns fatty acids at rest.
Okay, I learned something new, and I imagine many other people did as well. So this woman that was overweight, you looked at the problem through a different lens, that she's under-muscled. How does one go from being under-muscled to properly muscled, and what is that? And as I say this, I realize that many of our listeners probably don't resistance train, or if they do, they may not want to carry a lot of muscle, thinking that that would make them have to buy a new wardrobe. You know, certainly some of our listenership probably wants to gain more muscle, but is there
a new wardrobe?
Or a new
sure.
wardrobe.
Yeah.
Is there a way to view increasing muscle mass in a way that is compatible with kind of, we go like a traditional aesthetics or with overall health in a way that's sort of distinct from quote-unquote bodybuilding? I mean, again, as soon as we talk about muscle, we think about slabs of meat added to different parts of our body, and surely certain people probably want to add muscle to certain parts of their body for aesthetic reasons. But how should we think about muscle in the context of some of the to-dos in terms of nutrition and exercise? And we'll segue into that. Again, how should we conceptualize this business of being under-muscled and getting to, I guess, what we call appropriately muscled?
I think that it's a really good point, this idea of being appropriately muscled. So the truth is, I can't tell you how much skeletal muscle mass you should have for optimal health. I don't know how much skeletal muscle mass I should have for optimal health. We haven't done a good job in the literature and just as a population being able to track skeletal muscle and know what is optimal. We are really good at looking at body fat, and we're really good at looking at bone. But when it comes to skeletal muscle, DEXA is an extrapolation. So, for example, we use DEXA as the gold standard. And I'm going to come back to what we need to do to gain healthy skeletal muscle. But I think that it's really important to put things into perspective and a framework for how we think about things. We traditionally use DEXA. DEXA looks at bone and it looks at lean tissue collectively. Part of lean tissue is skeletal muscle mass. It doesn't determine the health of skeletal muscle mass. It doesn't determine anything about the quality of that tissue. It purely looks at lean tissue, which then we determine part of that lean tissue, maybe it's 40% is skeletal muscle. And that's important to understand as we begin to frame up the conversation as how much skeletal muscle should I have? I have no idea. But what I can tell you is that if I were to look at your blood work and I saw something like elevated triglycerides or elevated insulin or elevated glucose, I would begin to understand that the health of your skeletal muscle isn't where it should be. And by the way, the health of skeletal muscle mass begins when we're young. This idea of sarcopenia, which for the listener or the viewer, the definition of sarcopenia, by the way, became a disease. It wasn't even classified as a disease till 2016.
Wow.
Yes, wow, which is very recent for a disease. It is a decrease in muscle mass and function. But interestingly, we don't necessarily know what one should have. So I think it's important to understand that when we're talking about the health of skeletal muscle, we're still pretty much in the infancy of understanding the trajectory of where it is and where it's going.